And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Welcome to the Dice Tower!
Hi, I'm Tom Vasel, and this is Melody, and welcome to the Dice Tower. Today, we're going to be reviewing an expansion to one of my favorite games. I really enjoyed Ticket to Ride Markland, Ticket to Ride Europe, Ticket to Ride, and then Ticket to Ride Nordic countries, and Ticket to Ride Switzerland. All four are basically in a series, a family of games. And what's interesting is an expansion has just come out for basically all the Ticket to Ride games. This is Ticket to Ride, the Dice expansion. Comes in a kind of a cubicle box to some degree. I almost was thought it was funny that they made a Dice expansion for the game. It never occurred to me that the game needed a Dice expansion. But some folks really like Dice, and since it works with all 5 games, I thought, hey, that's an interesting concept. So let's see here what's inside this box. Alright, as we open the box, we see inside there's a small rule book. It's actually kind of thick, but it's because it has rules in many languages. The rules for English are simply 2 pages. And then inside the box is a dice cup. I already own a dice cup, but this is one, I guess, with the Ticket to Ride logo on the side there, which is already wearing off from so much use with the hands. I would imagine it will be gone in a couple weeks. But inside here, we have the pieces of the game. The game comes with 5 white dice, 3 black dice, and then a pile of tokens. These tokens are either show a single rail or a double rail. We'll talk about the tokens in a bit. And we'll talk about the black dice in a bit. Let's talk about these dice. These are the main addition to the game, these 5 dice. These dice, basically, for each game, you're going to take the deck of train cards that comes with the game, and it's gone. Kaput. And instead of that, you'll be using these dice instead. On a player's turn, they are going to roll these dice and look at the results. After they look at the results, they can decide whether to keep some of them or all of them, and they can roll the remainder and see what they roll. The dice have different sides to them. They either show a single track, a double track, a city or town or whatever it's called, and an engine here which stands for a wild. The single tracks and the double tracks are on 2 sides, so that's the thing that you'll roll most often. So let's say I'm playing a game here of Ticket to Ride. And on this board, I want to put trains down between these 2 cities here. The color here doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter in this version at all. We're replacing the cards with the dice. So to get this here, this is a double track, so I need to roll 5 doubles. So I roll my dice. Let's see if I get it. I got 1 double and 1 wild, so I'll keep that. And I got 2 singles and a city. No good. So I'll re-roll them. And I got another wild and another double. That's 4. That's not good enough. Now, maybe I can say, well, okay, instead of that, here's a double right here that I need. So I'm going to put 2 trains right here between Augsburg and this city right here. I'm going to put 2 trains right there. So I only need to use 2 of my dice. I have 3 dice left over. I cannot use those to put it between 2 other cities. That's it. I can only do 1 action. However, I can take 2 dice and set them aside and not use them, and take one of these tiles. I can either take a single tile or a double tile, and I can keep these tiles in front of me. Let's say that at the beginning of my turn here, with the dice I just rolled, I had 2 of these double tiles in front of me. I just rolled 4 double tiles, 2 double tiles and 2 wilds, that's 4 double tiles, and I can add one of these tokens, discarding it, and that would have let me build between here, all 5. So really, the only way to build on a track that's 6, 7, or 8 is to get these tokens. You can have up to 3 of them at any time. And in fact, the 9 route thing that comes in the Nordic countries cannot be built upon because it's just not possible. Doesn't really change the game that much, but just letting you know that that's there. So you're basically building tracks between these on double routes or on single routes. Since there are many more single routes on boards than there are double routes, you'll find yourself using these single die results more often. If you are building on a board, for example, Europe, and that has tunnels. Let's say I want to roll on these tunnels. And so I roll these dice here, and I get the same result. I get 4 doubles. 4 doubles. Now that's a great thing, because I only need 3 to build in this tunnel. But before I do that, I then need to take these 3 black dice, which have tracks on 2 sides of them, and roll them in the cups. I roll them, and I have 1 symbol showing. It's a possibility of 3. That means I need 1 more of those double tiles to build it. And so double symbols to build it. And since I have 4, I'm in luck, and I can build 3 trains there because I'm fine. Had I rolled 2 symbols, I would have needed 5, and I only have 4. Unless, of course, I had that tile again, then I could discard that. If you happen to have a fairy where there's a wild needed, it's the same thing as the basic game. You need to use a wild token, a wild die, to build on these with these train symbols on them. And finally, this symbol here. When you're using this in a game, and you can use wilds with that too, that lets you draw destination tickets. For each symbol that you use, you draw a destination ticket, and you can keep it or discard it. That makes drawing destination tickets a lot simpler, and you'll be drawing a whole pile of them throughout the game. And you can also use these symbols when you're moving a passenger from Markland. When you're moving that passenger from city to city, you can move it on your own tracks, and you can move it on someone else's track for each one of these that you have rolled. That's basically the game in a nutshell. Let's talk about my opinion of it. I have to say that I'm not really that fond of this expansion. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think that the idea is interesting, but interesting doesn't necessarily mean it's worth getting. I played it with all the different games, tried it out with all of them, and I found that it works much better with Europe and Markland. I think it works best with those two. Maybe it works best with Europe over all of them. And then United States is right behind that. But with Switzerland and the Nordic countries, I don't think it worked very much at all. These tiles aren't really needed because most of the routes in Switzerland and Nordic countries are short. And so therefore, I mean, these tiles are easy to get because you're placing short routes all the time, but you don't have much need to play them during the course of the game. Maybe occasionally, but I just didn't see that it worked that well with them. It worked, moving the passengers was a pretty nifty idea, and in the United States and Europe, the longer routes, it was fun to try to do those. But see, the thing is, I really like these cards. I like these train cards. I like drawing them. I like holding a huge pile of them, watching what other colors people are taking, trying to figure out where on the board they're going. And that adds a level of tension to the game that with these dice is gone. No longer is taking long routes a really good strategy. You really just need to finish your tickets as quickly as possible. And everyone is finishing stuff. And while the game seems to be moving faster because people are rolling the dice and putting routes on the board, the dice rolling and deciding which dice you're going to keep makes it basically the same length overall. So, I don't know. It just didn't really add a lot. And everyone I played with had the exact same reaction. Everyone said, well, that was a nice change. It was something fun adding to the game. But it really wasn't anything fantastic, something that we want to do all the time. Let's go back to the original game. Why are all these colors on the board if we're not using them? Component-wise, I don't necessarily need the cup. So if I get rid of the cup, I mean, anyone can use a cup. Is some dice and a handful of tiles worth the suggested retail price of $20? I don't really think so. I mean, it would be if it changed the game dramatically and made it a ton of fun. But since it really doesn't do much other than add a bit of Yahtzee elements to the game, and just it's different, I just don't think that it's probably worth that price. I want to give it a positive review because I love these games so much and I'm looking for variants. But this is kind of like that variant that you play a couple times and say, oh, that's interesting, clever idea, and then you're done. I don't see myself using this hardly at all. No one I've played with, they say, yeah, we do it once in a while, but we don't want to do it continually. I also found that it's not really that easy to teach to new people to the game. If people played the game before, it's okay, and especially with kids, for them matching cards to colors is an easier concept than these dice. What did you think of the game, Melody?
The dice were a little bit hard to understand, like, what kind of dice should I use? Where should I put my trains? And, like, what kind of ticket should I put? Like, that kind of stuff. And it was a little bit hard understanding the dice.
And we managed to play a game, and Melody got through it, but it just wasn't as easy as the cards for her. And so, for kids, I'm not sure it's as good of an idea as the cards themselves. So, I'm kind of giving this one a negative, not a horrible negative review, because it wasn't a bad game. It's fine. It's a decent expansion. But it doesn't add enough that I would want to play with it very often, if at all. And so, therefore, it's probably not worth many people's time unless you are one of those people who wants to put Yahtzee in your Ticket to Ride. For me, I like my cards.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.